The way in which Arjun Erigaisi plays this game is insane. Let's have a look at what happens. This is the final round of Chennai Grand Masters 2023 and Arjun has the white pieces. Now generally they tell you control the center in the opening, develop all your pieces, and that's the right way to play. But we'll see how many times does Arjun break the rules of not moving the same piece twice in the opening, continuously moving his pawns, and this is going to be epic. Arjun opens the game with 1d4 and Sanan, after taking some time, brings his knight out to f6. Until now it's all fine. Arjun plays even the classical move c4. So this is controlling the center. Sanan puts his pawn on e6. Generally you bring your knight out, which is what Arjun does. All good. Knight to c3. We are going into the Nimzo Indian defense. Sanan plays his bishop to b4 and we have the Nimzo. So now there are many lines. Queen c2 is positional, e3, but Arjun goes for f3, the Saemisch system. It's quite dangerous and it's quite aggressive. Now the knight on g1 feels a little bit sad because its square is taken away by the pawn. But that doesn't matter. Sanan plays his pawn up to c5. Now his point is that he wants to hit the pawn here. So Arjun either must take it or push his pawn, but he pushes the bishop away. Now this is not a common idea. Sanan must take the knight because that's what seems logical to do. He takes it and now Arjun will recapture. So 6 moves into the opening. You will see that white does not have a single piece that is developed, and also he's made all the pawn moves. Okay, that's fine. He brings his knight out to c6. That's logical. And he's controlling the center, hitting the center. Arjun captures the center with e4. So now he has pushed another pawn, but look at the white center. It looks very, very pretty. Sanan plays his pawn up to d6, controlling the center and looking to push his pawn to e5 so that his bishop can open up. Arjun finally develops a piece. The knight comes out to e2. Now h6 is played so that bishop g5 is avoided. Later on black can castle. A normal idea is knight g3 and bishop e2. Just put your pieces out, castle it out. But Arjun plays his rook. This is in the spirit of Ding Liren's rook a2 in the world championship. The cannonball opening, as they call it, queen a5. Now this is putting pressure here. So the idea is to take on d4, and when you can't recapture because the king is in pin, but the king moves away to f2. Gone are the chances to castle now. Arjun has played his king to f2. The queen goes back to c7, thinking that okay, the job is done. And now Arjun pushes his pawn once again. Now the knight should come to the side of the board to put pressure on c4, but instead he plays his knight in the center. Will Arjun now develop a piece? Yes, he plays his knight to g3, and with this he's opening up his bishop finally. Black castles it out. Now black's development lead is getting a bit menacing. 2 knights out, castling done, and look what Arjun does. He plays on the queen side. He's stopping black's active counterplay with b5. Does he have time to do all these things? Queen a5 once again played to attack the pawn on c3. While Sanan is trying to create play against white's position, Arjun is trying to just defend his center because he realizes if black doesn't get counterplay, he will actually be doing quite okay. Now the threat is to take here on c4, and a fantastic move rook a3, because if you take now, queen can go to a2, not to d3 when there is knight a5, but queen a2. That's why the rook moved ahead. What deep thinking. Rook e8 played, and now Arjun defends his c4 pawn with queen a2. Classy play. Queen comes back to a5, hitting the pawn on c3. That's defended for the time being. And now Arjun develops his bishop. So after nearly 16 moves of hardly developing a piece, what Arjun now is doing is he is now going into a speed run to develop all his pieces. Like you can see, he gets his rook into the center, rook d1. The reason why Arjun can do this now very well and keeps his advantage is because he has space. He's not let black be able to open up the position or have tactical possibilities. Bishop goes to d3, and Sanan now goes for knight h7. His idea could be to engineer the f5 break. If he manages to do that, that would be very nice. So Arjun puts his knight on f5 square. The queen comes back, defending the d6 pawn, and now g3 played, a very flexible move, aiming for a break with f4 later or h4 pawn push. The knight offers itself to be traded on e7. Will Arjun take it? No, he goes with his king to the g2 square. And now black can actually capture the knight with the knight and then bring his queen out, but plays h5. Now this move not particularly great, but you can see there Sanan deep in thought. Arjun brings his knight back to e3 and he says, I have more space, why should I trade pieces? Rook f8 played with the idea of pushing the pawn to f5. The queen comes here, not only looking at the b7 square but also stopping the f5 pawn push. Sanan goes bishop d7, and his idea could be to move his queen to c8, defend the pawn and also attack here. Arjun plays his rook back, and a fine move, because the rook was doing no longer much on the a3 square. It can be useful on the f2 square. Meanwhile, Sanan pushes his pawn on the king side, and now a very good move can be just to move the king away to h1. But Arjun here plays his knight to f5. He tries to manually stop the move f5 from coming on the board. Sanan now picks up the knight, and Arjun must recapture back with the pawn, which he does. White has nice space and all his pieces look quite coordinated. On the other hand, black is pretty solid and Sanan brings his queen to f6. He's trying to play on the dark squares. His knight can come to g5 and so on. Arjun pushes his pawn to g4, and at the right time, if he manages to break with the move f4, that would be perfect. For the time being, he cannot move his rook away because the bishop is angling the a pawn, and that's the reason why Arjun first brings his rook to the f file. You can see how Arjun now can build up the position. White really has no counterplay. The king goes to h8, and Sanan maybe is preparing at some point to go rook g8 and break with g6. h3 is played here to bolster the king side. And now what will Sanan Sjugirov do here? He plays his rook to g8. You can already sense that he's getting under time pressure. He has only 5 minutes on the clock, while Arjun has a good solid 20 minutes. And now Arjun pushes his pawn. One of the ideas, of course, is to limit the black pawns, but the other is that the bishop is no longer attacking the pawn on a4. And there you see Sanan moves his queen to e7 and does not let it go. And finally he lets it go. But guys, there is a deadly move now, f6, which attacks the knight. And if the knight takes here, then bishop g5 pinning it. Ooh, but Arjun misses it. He plays rook b7, but actually rook b2, he's not missed it, because now Sanan has to defend that pawn on b7, and he defends it. And now is the chance. You push the pawn, you must take it with the knight, and then bishop g5 with the queen coming in. It would be a very, very powerful idea. No, but Arjun misses it again. He plays bishop e3. Arjun generally is very sharp with these ideas, but here missing them. The queen goes to d8 and now attacks the pawn on a5. Queen goes to e1. Arjun is attacking the pawn on h4. That is an idea here. And now the queen chops off the pawn on a5. If Arjun goes and takes the pawn here, then the c3 pawn is hanging. So he plays f6. This is an excellent move, because now you are opening up things to the king side, If you take with the knight, then queen takes h4 comes with a check and eventually a checkmate. With 4 minutes to go, Sanan pushes his pawn to g6. And now, will Arjun take the pawn on h4? Maybe not yet. He first pushes the queen away. Important now is to think what to do with queen d8, because your pawn would be attacked here. But I think Arjun had prepared g5 there. So Sanan keeps the queen on the queen side, trying to look at this weakness where he can attack on the c3 pawn. Arjun kicks the queen once again. He goes bishop c1, and his idea is that he wants the pawn on h4 here without losing his c3 pawn. Sanan goes queen a1, keeping an eye on that pawn still. And what is Arjun going to do? He plays king h1. So Arjun being a little bit careful here with his strategy. He's already a pawn down, but the black king looks really weak and exposed. Bishop d7 is played to attack the rook, and I believe that the rook will now drop back to b1 to attack the queen. That could be the idea, but Arjun goes rook b3, and his point is that now the c3 pawn is defended. If you give a check, I will drop back my rook to b2. So all in all, looks pretty good here for Arjun Erigaisi. And Sanan goes queen a5 back. This time, this move does not make too much sense, because now the h4 pawn is clearly hanging and Arjun can take it. Yes, he takes it. He takes the h4 pawn. And if ever a rook can reach here, then the queen can sacrifice itself. That's the plan. Queen d8 played to attack the f6 pawn, and I think it's time to save that pawn by pushing g5. This is exactly what Arjun does. He goes g5, and now you can see the 4th rank has opened up. So if you get rook e1, rook e4, then sack the queen and play rook h4, it's a checkmate. Sanan makes sure that his bishop controls both these squares. It's important there. Meanwhile, Arjun now goes bishop e2. He doesn't trade. He keeps his bishop in the position. And now a6 is played by Sanan. This is interesting play now. Will Arjun... Arjun goes rook g1. Somewhere down the line, you could even sacrifice your rook and open up the h-file to swing your rook over here to threaten checkmate. But black is just making sure that the queen side play comes in time, because then Arjun does not have the time to go for the king side attack. AB, AB, but this is actually a free pawn there, and Arjun can now take it. He can take the b5 pawn. For those who want to win with an attack, this does not seem like the right move, because you need to be playing on the king side. But a pawn is a pawn. You are a pawn up. Queen a5 played. How about just bolstering your position with pawn to c4? Wouldn't that be super strong? Yes, exactly. Arjun does that, and he tells Sanan that yes, maybe I'm a bit distracted with queenside play, but in return I have a pawn, and that's precious. Rook a8 played this time by Sanan. He's trying to enter somehow through the queen side. Meanwhile, Arjun attacks the rook, and notice if the rook comes to b7, then it's all over from the other side. So, chess is a game of 64 squares. You have to keep your eye open throughout the board. You can't just keep playing on one side. And now Sanan wants to use the B file to enter, but Arjun says, give me the A file. He wants to get in here with his rook again. So pressure mounting on Sanan Sjugirov. He's down to 1 minute. He goes queen b4 and attacks Arjun's pawn here on c4. Of course, it's defended for the time being. What is Arjun going to do? He has 8 minutes. So he's handled his time very well. He goes rook a7. I like this move. And now the point is the f7 pawn is hanging, and Sanan instantly defends it with rook f8. King goes up to h2. Just staying steady there. And now queen comes in. So black's almost all the pieces are tied up to the defense. But the queen is the one which is all the time entering and creating issues. Arjun now drops back his queen to f2. I think a very logical and a very nice move. Be careful, Arjun. Don't take this pawn, otherwise you get checkmated in one move. That is, of course, not what Arjun is going to fall for. He plays his bishop out. Finally, the bishop comes into the game. And what powerful moment, because now the d6 pawn is hanging. And it's a very, very important pawn that is going to fall off. Is Arjun going to take that pawn? Yes, he does. He takes the pawn on d6. Guys, notice at many moments you can't really take this pawn with the queen because the rook goes back and swings over here. So the fourth rank is the critical one. For Sanan, opening it up is just almost curtains to his game. So rook b8 played. Sanan wants Arjun to pick up his rook so that at least his rook can enter via this rank. But look at Arjun. He's so strong here. He just says, I'm putting my bishop. I'm not letting your rook come out again. What beautiful control Arjun has. Sanan says, please take my rook now. I'm coming here. Of course, this time the bishop can capture the rook. So he takes it. Rook takes. And now important to fight against this idea, which is the rook coming in. He goes rook e7. Nice move there. Very nice move to stop any sort of counter play. Rook comes to a8. But now you see this rook is not very useful because there is no threat of rook a2. So actually there is no threat in the position. And Arjun can even chop off the f7 pawn. But even stronger is to bring your rook to e1 and threaten a checkmate in one move there on e8. It's like a very strong move. Rook e1. Is Arjun going to play it? He's taking his time. I think this might be the move that gives him the victory and also takes him into the lead of the tournament, onto the top of the leaderboard, because the final round Gukesh has just drawn his game, so he's on 4.5. Arjun is on 3.5, and a win will allow him to catch Gukesh at the top. And Sanan now has very little time, like a minute on the clock, but also his position is just dead lost. You can see resignation just written all over his position, and I think it's time to call it a day. He thinks for a bit. You can see Arjun very alert. He also knows that the game is over, and Sanan finally just making those final calculations and sees no way out and shakes Arjun's hands. It's resignation time. Arjun Erigaisi scores another win on demand and reaches 4.5 out of 7. A tremendous performance by the youngster to join Gukesh at the top. On tie breaks, Gukesh became the champion of the tournament. Arjun finished second, but it's very clear that Arjun is an amazing fighter, because he lost the first round of the tournament to P. Harikrishna, and from there to come back and score 4.5 in such a field just shows what an amazing player he is. He also became the player to score most number of wins at the Chennai Grand Masters 2023. So a huge shout out and congratulations to Arjun Erigaisi.